All right, welcome to episode 32 of the Rainier Strength Pod. I am here with Matt Selover. Matt has a 2065 single ply total. That is a 850-pound squat, a 525-pound bench press, and a 733-pound deadlift. Matt is a strong cat, whether you're putting him in single ply, whether he's raw, doesn't matter. The pride of Florida. Matt, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm good, man. I'm actually in Florida vacationing in the other part of Florida today at my parents' house in Daytona. So, and we're in like a totally different time zone again from what we had planned on. But I'm excited to be here today, man.
Very nice, dude. Absolutely. So were you born and raised in Florida?
Yeah, I was born in Orlando. Then I moved around between Florida and Georgia a couple times. Mostly grew up in the Daytona Beach area. Went to college in Orlando for a little bit, and then moved up to the Pensacola area about 17, 18 years ago, and I've been up there since then. So
Yeah, I've only been to Florida once. That was like dude, it was so long ago. It was like 2000 and so like 15, 14.
yeah.
And I was in Orlando for like a week. I went to like Gatorland and stuff. I thought it was super dope. I'm a fan of Florida, but is it as crazy as the internet make it seems with like the Florida
It's
man and all that kind of stuff? Like, is
Florida
it
man is
just
a
as
constant
crazy?
thing. Every county has several Florida man waiting on standby to do something crazy at all times. So my full-time job is I work as a paramedic in EMS, so I get to see all the Florida man stuff firsthand in person. So we
Oh
never
my gosh, dude, I imagine your job is wild.
Yes. It can be for sure. Can be.
That's crazy. How long did you have to go to school to do that?
So EMT school is only 6 months, but then paramedic school is like another almost 2 years after that. So it's about 2.5 years minimum. And then I did like flight paramedic and ground critical care paramedic and did all that stuff. And so if you do all that extra stuff, it's like 4 years. But I enjoy it. I've been doing it for 18 years now.
Damn, what made you want to get into that? It's a crazy field, man. High stress.
So kind of like a long story made short is I witnessed a really bad accident on my way back home from a concert in Orlando, like driving back to Daytona on I-4 at like 3 a.m. I was supposed to be at work at like Office Depot at 7 a.m. I worked as a graphic designer in the Copy Print Center. And like it's 3 a.m. We watched this horrific accident happen in front of us. Nobody's around us. Like 4 people got ejected out of the windshield on the interstate after they hit and I was just like, this is crazy. So we called 911, me and my buddy Josh, and waited on like EMS and fire and helicopters to get there. But we were on scene like by ourselves for like 10 minutes with these people. Like 2 of them were dead. The other 2, like one went off on the embankment, one hit the guardrail and was alive and trying to get up with 2 broken legs. Like he was very drunk. But it was a crazy experience. But I was like, when EMS and fire showed up and like they had us like helping them like hold. So we called 911 and we were waiting there for like 10 minutes for them to show up. And, we helped them on scene because there was, multiple injured patients. And I was like, wow, I think this is something I could do. Like I really enjoyed like helping people. And I didn't get super like nervous or frantic. So I had a buddy who was going to EMT school, and I was like, I'm going to drop out of graphic design, which is what I was in school for at the time, and decided to go to EMT school with him. And I just never really looked back from there. I enjoyed it from day one.
Yeah, that's I mean, dude, the stress adaptation there is massive. So with that, a lot of people in this day and age like to find kind of a lot of excuses for why they can't do things. But you have a high stress job, you have kids, you have a family, like you got a lot going on the side, and still you find the time to be a coach and a fucking killer powerlifter. So tell me about your time management. Like, how does that even work with you?
It is a balance, man. Luckily, EMS, most shifts you're not on calls 24/7. You have a little bit of downtime. So the service I work at it's a county agency, but it's not as busy as some of the surrounding counties that are around us. So I may run 3 to 6 calls in 12 hours. So I typically have extra downtime in between calls where I can work on coaching and I can respond to my clients. I try to always be available as quickly as I can. I don't do any of that I'll check in with you once a week bullshit. Like, no, if you message me and I'm not on a call and I'm not busy with my wife or kids, like I will respond to you, get back to you right then and there. So balancing, I typically program on Thursdays and Sundays. I'll do like half of my people on Thursday and half of my people on Sunday. I cap my roster at 30 lifters because coaching is kind of like my part-time job and EMS is my full-time job. And then, you could file family and kids in there somewhere between those or on top of those. But yeah, it can be difficult finding that balance at times, but your clients pay for an expectation, and you need to deliver on that expectation and get the programs out to them and get your feedback back to them. And to me, it's like a non-negotiable. If you make some things a not non-negotiable, you just do it because you have to. I kind of thrive in
Right.
chaos and busy, and I think that's probably the EMS environment in me. So I enjoy having a lot on my plate. Now, there are times where I regret how much I put on my plate because I'm also a meet director. I host 2 meets a year here for the last 3 years, and I can get a little stressed out as we get to like 3 or 4 weeks out, and I got to order shirts, and I got to find spotters and loaders, and lock down equipment, and the venue, pay for the venue, and until it comes to meet day when the meet starts, my stress level is very high. Once the meet starts, I have a great time, but it can
Yeah.
be kind of stressful is managing all those things for sure.
Yeah, and stepping into those leadership roles, can be extremely challenging. And I think I found out about your Instagram page through, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the Strong 365,
Yeah,
and you
365.
guys were doing like a everyone versus everyone type deal. And I
That's the
saw
least
that
I'm
and I was
doing,
like,
yeah.
okay. I was like, this is fucking sick. Like, this is cool. I really, really like that.
Yeah, so,
So,
our local meets here are great, but, there might be 1 or 2 equipped lifters and then all raw lifters. But, the way most meets function nowadays, especially like USPA, PLU, you don't get a best lifter award unless there's like more than 5 people in your category, like let's say open raw sleeves or whatever. So you could have someone, let's say multiply lifter, come in and hit like a 2,700 total, and they get nothing out of it. So yeah, as I've like delved into the equip side of things more, and as a meet director, I've grown to appreciate trying to come up with a system where it rewards all levels of lifters, whether you're tested, untested, raw with sleeves, multiply, whatever you enter as, you're competing against the total world record that you enter in. And that's your percentage, kind of like what Sheffield does, but just on a much larger scale. So let's say we have like a 23-year-old junior single ply 125 kg lifter, and they're tested. They're going to compete against that world record total on open powerlifting for their placing at the meet versus like you could have like a 19-year-old female raw with sleeves 165. They're going to compete against that open world record in that competition, and wherever your percentage lies between, let's say 90 and 100% is how your placing is going to be. So it's everyone versus everyone basically, and we've got a good mixture. I think I've got like 30% equipped lifters and 70% raw lifters, which is good for our area. We don't have a lot of equipped lifters, so we're drawing some out from surrounding states across the country and trying to bring more of that in here. Since we got a monolift, we've got the F8 bench bar, we've got the good Dynabody bench, we got all the good equipment that everybody like. You know what I mean?
yeah, dude, those Dyna body benches are fucking sick. I remember seeing like a bunch of videos of like, the guys from like 2006 and 7 and all that benching on those, and I always thought it was like just like the sickest thing ever.
Yeah, it's got a great pad
So
and it's nice and sturdy, man.
yeah, dude. And I completely agree with you as far as just like the aspect of well, there's only one competitor in here, so it's like so you don't get the best overall. Because that had happened to me at a meet. I competed and there it was the USPA, and I think there was like 40 competitors or something, and I was competing raw, but I was in wraps. And so everyone else was in sleeves. And so there was still, I think
Same
there were still
problem.
4 or 5. Yeah, there was still people there in my weight class. There was like 4 or 5 of us, and then if you look on open powerlifting, it's like I ended up being like toward the top. And I remember my dad was like, why didn't you win? Like you lifted more than that guy. And I was like, well, it doesn't work like that. There wasn't anyone else wearing wraps really. So you
Yeah,
just kind of
and
like,
that's how
yep,
powerlifting used
that's
to be,
just
dude. Used to be no equipment level. You just came in and competed with what the rules allowed. Maybe you were in single ply squat suit, or maybe you were in a bench shirt, maybe you weren't. So this kind of evens that out and kind of brings it back to, dude, just be strong. I don't care how you compete, how you want to compete, whatever equipment you want to use, you will be put on the same pedestal. You're gonna have the same standards. You still got to squat to depth. You still got to lock out your benches. You still got to lock out your deadlifts. The rule book doesn't change depending on the equipment level you wear, but you will be put on the same level as far as winning. And when we're giving money away, I'm giving like $3,000 away at this meet. So yeah. Yep.
yeah, and that's the thing too, is like getting involved when you see something that you think can be better. Getting involved is always the right decision. So, what
Yeah.
was the catalyst for you getting involved as a meet director?
So we've always had USPA meets in our area for like a decade, and they're all good. They're all good meets. They're well run. The equipment's fine. It's a really well, efficiently run meet. But they weren't really giving anything out to the lifters at all. So like lifters were winning and getting like a $50 gift card to some, kabuki, so you could buy some bar grease or something. But there wasn't really a lot of like going back to the lifters at the time. So a lot of my lifters were winning these meets, and like they were just kind of like, well, why am I entering this meet? I don't really get anything out of it. Not that that's the only reason to compete, but like you see all these other meets and all these other feds are giving out like $500, $1,000, $250 for free meet entry, at least something for winning the meet overall. And there wasn't really a lot of that going on here at the time. So I was like, you know what? I like all we have is like combo rack USPA meets. So I kind of like want to do something different. I want to like have lift like meets that are friendly to equip lifting. So we only use a mono. We don't do any meets that are combo rack. So that's already much more friendly to wrap lifters and equip lifters and everybody. It's much safer as well. Then that was kind of my catalyst at first, is like bringing in meets that are much more friendly to equip lifters that would want to come in and compete, or even local ones. And then obviously like rewarding our lifters and giving money back to them for competing. So every meet I've done so far, we've given somewhere between $1,200 and $3,500 back every meet as cash prizes. So just depends on the meet and
That's
how many
sick,
people
dude.
find. So, yep. That was kind of
Yeah.
like my
So
catalyst there.
how did you even find this sport? Like, how did you get involved? What was like the first kind of impression that you had of powerlifting? You've been in the game for a while. Tell me how that started.
Dude, man, I came across YouTube. I'm telling you, like the early days of YouTube powerlifting were so sick. So like Mark Bell, super training videos, Pete Rubish in the basement videos, Yuri Belkin, 8 Man Strong, like all that stuff. Like I just discovered it like in 2011. I was doing like cross training, not CrossFit, never did that, but like circuit training and like long distance road cycling was like my thing at the time. So I did like the carbon fiber road bikes. And then I was just like on YouTube one day, and I think maybe like an animal video came on, and I was like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? These guys are screaming and lifting weights like violently, and there's ammonia and there's chalk everywhere, and like, like Dan Green and all those guys. And I'm like, what is this shit? I want to do this. You know what I mean? So then I started like looking into it from there and started watching like, IPF Worlds back then was basically equipped single ply. I didn't know what that was at the time, but I saw like Blaine Sumner, and I was like, what the dude, this guy's lifting like 1,000 pounds, squatting it to depth. It was like the most impressive thing I've ever seen in life. So I kind of just started like delving into it from there. And I was like doing my own training. I would like have a little training app, and I went to like a powerhouse gym, and we had 2 sets of chains, and I started putting chains on like every fucking lift I could, just because it looked cool. And that's what all the videos on YouTube were, you know what I mean? So we had like two 25-pound chains, and I put it on the incline bench and put them on squat and put them on the deadlift, and like, I thought I was doing something cool, basically. But yeah, I kind of got into it around 2011, 2012. And like, I started like doing the big three. I ran like 5x5 and 5-3-1 for years, which I think honestly, most people could do really well just running those programs for a couple years before they hire a coach, in my opinion. But that's kind of how I got into it. And then I unfortunately like kind of stopped for a little bit for like a year and a half, 2 times. And I also had that stupid mindset of like, well, I'm not as strong as these guys. Why do I need to compete? So I didn't compete for years. I just kept training and having fun with it and training with my friends. And but I never competed till 2018 for some reason, because I'm watching all these crazy people on YouTube, and I thought that's like, those are the guys at the local meets. Like that's what all these guys at local meets look like. Not knowing that these are like the best of the best lifters in the world right now. You know what I mean? So I had that mindset that we don't want people to have of, I'm not strong enough to compete, but which I think is bullshit now looking back. I would have been a lot stronger and probably more further along in my career if I started competing earlier on, you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and
yeah.
that's the thing too, like we're we're just exposed to so much on social media. It's like those feelings of inadequacy where like I can't compete. Like these guys are fucking lifting 1,000 pounds. Like who am I? Like I can't do any of this.
That's
So
pretty
it's
much
like,
how I
and then
felt
you
after
realize,
the day. You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
I
Yeah,
was like,
and then
what
you
can we
go to
do
your
different?
local meet and you're like, "What the heck, man? There's like a there's a 120-pound lady here. There's a 75-year-old dude here. Like this is crazy. This is awesome. Everyone's doing this."
That's one of the things I really love about powerlifting at the local level now, is like my last meet we did in January, we had like a 72-year-old grandma. She's on a weight loss journey, but her coach got her motivated to do a deadlift only powerlifting meet, her first meet. And she's lost like 100 something pounds. And she went out, and the crowd did not care. They were on their feet screaming for her to lift. And we had Danny Grigsby. No, that was the meet before. Anyways, we had another guy right after her in the same flight deadlifting like 880 pounds. Like they're screaming for her just as loud as they were screaming for that guy. And that was awesome. Like that was my favorite part of the meet. Like this lady's day has just been made. You know what I mean? So hopefully she comes back again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's dude. That's the sickest part about powerlifting, man. It's like when you get off of social media, it's a very tight knit community for the most part. I mean, you meet a lot of really cool people. Like you develop a lot of really good relationships, and it's a big confidence builder. You know, especially as like you get older and like it gets more important to start resistance training and whatnot. But also, you have a 2065 single ply total, which I am I love it all. Raw, multiply, single ply, but I am more of like a single ply supremacist. I love single ply powerlifting. It is my cup of tea. It is my favorite thing. I think it is the greatest version of powerlifting ever. I'm very biased. What got you into the equipment?
So I don't disagree with you at all. I think single ply is the king of equipped powerlifting. So you're not going to convince me otherwise, in my opinion. Like I think I agree with you 100%. And I think a lot of that bias comes from like when I got into powerlifting, like at the world level, like yeah, they had just started doing raw worlds like a year or two before that. I think 2009, 2010, but it wasn't popular. You know what I mean? People were watching Blaine Sumner. They were looking to see what he was going to do, and those guys. You know what I mean? So I think because that's where I came into this is like I didn't have a negative bias towards it because it looked like powerlifting. Like the squat stance is not extremely wide. The depth is still there. Yeah, obviously there's a slow eccentric on bench for a lot of those guys, but like I didn't know any different watching that. I was like, oh my God, this guy's benching 800 pounds. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then, obviously deadlifts looks pretty similar. I think that's why single ply appeals to more people than multiply does, is because it still looks like powerlifting. It doesn't look like kind of like a different sport to a degree. Now, I do appreciate multiply when it's done well. I will say, like 90s multiply, early 2000s, good standards being upheld is sick. And I'm actually trying multiply for the first time right now. I'm doing a meet in November, my first multiply meet. Hopefully, if I hit the numbers I want to hit, I can just go back to single ply and be done with it because that's one, it's easier to train. Like multiply, I really do think it takes like a small crew to actually be successful even just in a training session. Like you need 2 or 3 people there to help you that are experienced, know how your gear's supposed to sit on you, get it on you, watch you and observe you with more experience than what you have. So I do think that there's some validity there to that. But I agree 100% that single ply supremacy is there as well for me. So I will be going back to that after this.
Yeah, dude. And I think also it's just like it's the perfect in between because like it's not gonna beat you up. Like when you look at someone, we all love Dan Green. He's so fucking awesome, but like he has been fucked up a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like a
Yeah.
lot of that is from the years of raw fucking powerlifting. But then you look at like the multiply stuff and you got some guys are like, I got fucking 6 plies on and fucking it's like, all right, well, like what are we really doing here? So it's like single ply is that perfect in between where it's not fucking you up so bad as far as like the raw stuff goes, but it's not also turning into, like you said, looking like kind of a different sport. It's like that perfect right in between what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the reasons, so I always wanted to try it. I just never had the resources to try it. And then it was kind of like thrust upon me. I had a really bad adductor injury lifting raw because I've always had like a wider stance raw squat still. That's just kind of how my hips are shaped. And I have torn my adductors, strained them multiple times. I had a pretty bad injury. And I had a buddy of mine like give me a pair of briefs. He's like, "Hey, just try these." Like, and I rehab myself in the briefs, just doing like tempo squats in briefs until I was like out of enough pain to take them off. It was actually a pretty good rehab tool, to be honest with you. They were just like some legless single ply Centurion briefs, and it was like enough support to where I could still train. Like, didn't feel good for a while, but like that was kind of like my dipping my toe into the equip side of things. And after that rehab process was done, I was like, you know what? I kind of like just want to try this. So I ordered like Titan F6, which I mean, is like wearing a fucking tight Under Armour shirt. Like you can basically do a raw bench groove in an F6. And then I got a used single ply Centurion on eBay for like $80. And that was it. I never really looked back since then.
Yes. All right. So what started this? I think also as a lot of people start to get into like single ply and they start to learn the gear and stuff, we do kind of get a lot of us get kind of curious about what's on the other side of the fence, with like multiply and stuff. I do have an LUP upstairs. I've never used it, but I do own an LUP. So like
Like a
I do
fanny
have
pack.
multiply equipment.
Yeah.
So what got you curious about the multiply? Was it like, let me see what I can do here? Like if I could do this in one layer, if I could put up 2065 in one fucking layer of polyester, what can I
Yeah.
do in some canvas?
I mean, part of it was that I think there's some people's numbers I want to beat as well, specifically that compete in multiply that I know, and just to kind of like send a message and be done with it. Hopefully, I can do it in one meet and just be like, all right, I beat your best total ever, and I'm gonna go back to single ply now. So some of that's like personal, you know what I mean? And I think that's fine. I think that's healthy to keep you motivated. I don't see why people get upset about that. I'm like, that's how even people inside of Westside operated like that against each other. You know what I mean? Like they motivated each other, they pushed each other, but there was also a lot of competitiveness. Some of it's friendly, some of it's not friendly, but they still helped each other. But, you know, I want to beat people's numbers and then I want to go back to single ply and get stronger again. So, and I'm still going to do raw again at some point. Probably do a raw with wraps meet here soon next year sometime because I do want to hit like 804 in wraps and then, see whatever it can do on the other two. I like squat. Squat is the king of the lifts for me. Like, it's like mostly what I care about because I think like anybody can deadlift heavy from 148 pounds to 300 pounds. They can all deadlift the same amount of weight basically. And then, bench is mostly ruled by bigger lifters. But you do see some of these guys that
Yeah.
can bench pretty well with these super, super wide grips, lots of arching and stuff, which I'm not against. I don't think there should be any rules against that in IPF. I think the bench elbow depth thing is ridiculous and it's very poorly judged. But not a lot of people can
Yeah.
squat here. You know what I mean? You gotta
Yeah, I mean,
there's
the
typically some
bench,
prerequisites there.
the bench used to be ruled by the biggest guys, the most jacked guys, and to a lot of degree is still like body weight heavily dependent, right? Like my bench went up when my body weight went up, but you do see, especially like some of these Japanese guys in the IPF that are like 165 pounds that are
Yeah,
pushing some fucking
physicality.
serious weight by leveraging,
Crazy, crazy
leveraging their
wide grip.
technique.
Yeah, yeah. Which is great. Like I'm not against that. That still takes years and years of work to get done. They're just like the same argument against sumo. I'm like, bro, have you ever like these people that bitch about sumo in the comments all the time? I'm like, have you ever done it? You might be really bad at it. Like I am not good at sumo. It took me years, and the only reason I even learned it because I want to get better at coaching it. So I forced myself to learn how to do sumo deadlift, and I've gotten decent at it, I would say. But like I'm not a specialist like some of these people are. You either click for it and you got the leverages and you got the hip insertions and mobility, and to get really upward torso, and then you can get a lot out of it. But like for me, the only reason I do it now is because it's less fatiguing than conventional is. Like I can conventional and sumo the same amount of weight, but I can get half the fatigue cost out of sumo that I can get out of conventional. If I go max out my conventional deadlift right now, I'm wrecked for like 11, 12 days, man. My rectors are ruined. If I max out sumo today, I could deadlift again in 3 days probably. You know what I mean? It's just a huge
Yeah.
cause and effect there that's completely different for me. So, but yeah, like
Yeah.
why argue against good technique? If it's in the rule book, it's within the rules, then that's what powerlifting is about moving the most amount of weight.
Yep, yep. It's true. And like for me, everyone has like preferences, right? Like I am more on the side of the conventional deadlift, right? Because like George Lehman, Pete Rubish, like that's what I like. I like the KK. I like the conventional deadlift. I prefer the conventional deadlift. But I'm not going to go out of my way to make it my personality to shit on the sumo deadlift because what am I going to say about Dan Green or Yuri Belkin or like, there's a 59 kg lifter that I follow who's a fucking animal in the IPF who literally looks like he was genetically built to deadlift.
Yeah.
I'm slipping on his name, but he's a fucking animal. And it's like, what am I going to say to this guy? Right? Like there's some people make it their entire personality. I mean, it's like their entire page is just shitting all over sumo. And it's like, well, I mean, you can't, at the end of the day, you can't do it. I can't do it. Dude, there's a fucking 250-pound gap between my fucking sumo and my conventional. So it's
Yeah.
like, what am I going to say, dude? I
That's
can't
how
do
mine
it.
started too, man. That's about how mine started too. Like, I had like I think a 735 conventional at the time when I started learning sumo. And I think my best sumo was like 550 and it was ugly. You know what I mean? It was not pretty. It was like conventional sumo, a wide stance sumo or a conventional basically. And there's still days where I go in and I feel like I
Yeah,
don't know
dude.
what I'm doing, but
Yeah.
then some days it clicks too. So it's a skill, man. And like when you're not particularly gifted for it, as far as leverages go, you got to work your ass off. It's very technical. You can't muscle fuck a sumo
Yeah.
deadlift and do it the right way. So I
No,
have
no,
respect for it.
you really can't.
Yeah. Like, look at Dan Grigson,
Absolutely.
dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
I sit here and watch him deadlift. I'm like, it's so technically like the timing of everything as far as like what type of bar you use, what type of plates you use changes your leverage point and how much, slack you can pull out of the bar. So your starting position is forever changing. Like a kabuki bar, even with kilo plates, depending on how much weight you have on the bar, that bar is like three different bars, depending on how much weight you have on the bar. Because like at 500 pounds, you get a little slack pull. At 700 pounds, you get a lot of slack pull. At 900 pounds, you get way like your starting position as far as bar goes is completely different every single time you add two plates to the bar. So there's a skill and learning curve that goes along with all that too. So I mean, you got to respect that they go through that and learn how to do those things.
Yeah,
But
100%. So tell me, what has been the biggest difference? You said you were naturally kind of a wider raw squatter. So
yeah,
those people tend to take to the multiply stuff a little bit better. Like I squat pretty narrow. So I will do multiply eventually, but it's going to be a very tough task for me. Just because of how I squat. So what has been the biggest change for you going into multiply versus single or raw? What have you found out so far where you're like, wow, this was really different?
um, I think I've only been in the canvas suit like for 4 max effort sessions and like 4 dynamic effort sessions so far. But like obviously, you're gonna have to have a certain amount of weight to hit depth, even when you're like trying to force yourself into the hole. Finding out what that number is based on like what kind of briefs you have on that day, what your body weight is, how the suit's fitting is gonna kind of be an ever changing thing. But it's pretty uncomfortable. There's a lot of stiffness and there's a lot of compression. And I think like my first set that I put my suit on for, I get dizzy every single time. Even with my straps down, like just putting on, I've got a 2-ply brief, Titan brief, and then I've got like the canvas suit in straps down. Like my first set, I always like see stars as soon as I unrack the bar. And I think it's just like my body getting used to like that compression on the lower part of my body. It usually gets better as the day goes on. But obviously I go slightly wider in the multiply than I do in single ply. But I've squatted so many different ways and in variations that it doesn't feel like unnatural so far. So I love doing high bar narrow stand squats. Like if I'm like in an off season or if I'm like programming myself, I will literally program myself raw high bar all the time. One, it's aesthetically pleasing. Two, it's fun to do. I think it's a good looking squat and it develops your quads really well. And I just enjoy doing it. But I'm a fan of like squatting in very different angles throughout the year to build different structures and support different structures and also let other structures relax too. Like if I constantly come in every single day and I only squat wide, one, I might get some overuse stuff to my adductors and abductors. Two, my quads are not getting as developed. So I like to kind of like go back and forth between the two. You know what I mean? As often as I can. Same thing with SSB squats. SSB squats, I'll squat narrow as well, like a high bar, or front squats will be also a narrow squat, more quad oriented. So all those are good builders. And I think you should
Yeah.
probably switch between those throughout the year at some point.
Now, what about the shirt? Have you noticed a big difference in going from a single ply shirt to a multiply shirt?
So I have a 2-ply Titan F6 that I bought brand new from them. I have used it 2 or 3 times and I have not touched in it yet. So we're about to find out what I can do in it soon once I get back home and back on with my training partner, um, who has like done multi and single ply for 40 years. So he's going to be a huge benefit to me to have as a training partner for this prep coming up. But I don't feel a huge difference between like the super katana that I use and the Titan F6, which a Titan F6 is pretty much like a beginner shirt, even in the 2-ply. It does have the scoop collar, which helps some, but I could probably get 20 or 30 pounds more out of the 2-ply versus the single ply right now. Some of that's probably also skill oriented. As I use it more and I get more development of how to use the shirt, hopefully that'll go up some. But I was talking to Roman Mustachio about this, and he was like, "Don't get too caught up on like layers and as far as like equip bench goes, because like the heaviest ever poly bench was by Jimmy Kolb, and it was in a single ply shirt. So I could probably just go into a tighter single ply shirt
Yeah.
and get more out of it than I could out of just adding layers. You know what I mean? So I definitely need to go to a tighter single ply shirt though, because I can just get mine on and off like by myself, like it's nothing, no suit slips, throw it on, wrestle it against the bar for a second, and it's on and ready to go. So I definitely need to graduate into a tighter shirt for sure. But I also train by myself most of the time, especially on bench days, because my training partner has not been doing upper days. He's got like a shoulder issue going on. He's just doing lower days. But most of the time I train equip bench by myself. or I have to find a couple gym bros at the gym, be like, hey man, can you spot me so I don't die like on this set? But they don't really know what it is. They don't know powerlifting. They don't know what a quit bench is. They don't know, how to hand off safely or spot safely. So it's always a risk. It's always a risk.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a big risk, man. Like there is to spotting equip powerlifting it's a whole different thing, man. Especially if we're talking about the bench press, especially when we're talking about the bench. But with the with you getting into multiply, like you said, it's kind of like a one and done type of thing where like you feel like you have something to prove here, you feel like you have someone to beat. Do you have any aspirations of like maybe qualifying for like the WPO or anything like that, or is it is just a one time thing? Because you might like it a
Yeah.
lot.
I am liking it so far. I'm enjoying it, like putting that little bit extra weight on the bar. And I also like challenges. I like to challenge myself to learn something new. So once I start it, like that's kind of like what happened with single ply. I was like, oh, I tried the briefs and then I bought a suit. And like once I squatted in the suit one time, I was like, "Dude, this is so sick. Like this is awesome." It was like learning how to power lift all over again. And like that excitement coming like it's exciting and frustrating at the same time, especially bench. You know that. Where one week you come in, oh man, I smoked this. I got my touches in really easily. You come in next week, you weigh 2 pounds heavier, and you're like, I can't touch with what I was touching with last week, 2 warm-ups ago. So there's that frustration level to it, but it's also like a challenge. It's a mental and physical challenge that I really enjoy of trying to do these things I've never done before, or try to like perfect them or get better at them and master them. So I there is a possibility. I have talked to Roman about like maybe doing an APO qualifier and trying to go to WPO at some point, but it depends on how this meet goes. So, this meet prep is probably going to be tough. I've got some expectations I put on myself and I want to meet those. But I do think like I could see that happening because I really appreciate what the WPO is doing as far as standards go in multiply. And I'm not saying that to like shit on any like certain federation or meet or anything like that, because I've seen some that are frustrating to watch. And I'm like, that's one of the things that actually kept me out of wanting to try multiply is like watching some of these meets and like squats get past that are 6 or 8 inches high. And I'm like, I don't really want to be a part of that. You know what I mean? Like, because it all gets lumped together. You know what I mean? People just see multiply and they go, oh, high squat. You know what I mean? Which it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way in any powerlifting. It happens in raw too. USPC had that issue last year with somebody squatting like 800 pounds and it was like multiply high.
Yep.
And I think they ended up revoking the lift later on, which was fine. But I don't want to see it in any kind of powerlifting. You know what I mean? Hit the standard or get out, or just
Yeah.
get no lift. So yeah, I think it's a possibility that I may try it more afterward. It just depends on how this prep goes. And I will say like I said earlier, you have to rely on other people to be there to help you, which is difficult sometimes. With my schedule and their schedule, they have to line up. Okay, I have to do max effort squat on this day. Oh, I can't do it that day. And you're just like, when am I going to do this session? I got 7 days in a week. I'm working 5 of them. And then, you got your kids and stuff. And it's like when you add more layers into things, it adds the complexity of having to have those training partners there that you can rely on. So that's part of the issue too, versus like single ply, I can kind of like get away with training myself unless I'm really going crazy heavy on something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
see
It's
how it goes.
like, and with the squat, with the squat in the deadlift, as far as like the single ply stuff goes, like most days I train in my garage on the shirted days. Sherman and I bench on Friday, and like I got someone there, and it's good. I benched in a shirt like twice upstairs by myself in the garage, and I was like, oh my God, like, even with the monolift hooks, I was like, bro, this is fucking sketchy, dude.
Yeah.
Like-
Yeah, I bench Sherman by myself most of the time, and I usually warm up to like 505, 525 before I go ask for a spot, because I've gotten to the point where I feel comfortable self unracking and like knowing the groove of the shirt enough to where I can hit that by myself. And then like if I go higher than that, I'll go grab a couple people and be like, hey man, this is how this is going to go. Like, I'll let you know if I need help, but like if it goes this way or if it goes this way, grab the bar. You know how it goes. You either eat it with your
Yeah.
teeth or it goes into your stomach. So thankfully I've only had that happen one time.
Yeah.
I tried to force a touch. I think it was I bought a new Evil Twin single ply and I was trying to learn that shirt. And that shirt was great when I first got it. And now it sucks. Like it's so stretched out now. I was trying to force a touch and I lost my arm. I honestly thought I broke my arm because it like shot out from under the bar trying to force a touch forward. and obviously dumped it on my stomach. But like the noise my arm made and how fast it shot up like a slingshot, I was like, oh, my arm's broken. And then I got out and it was like I had like some tricep elbow pain for a week or two, but I fully thought it was just done for at that point. But that's the only real big scare I've had benching so far. So
Yeah.
I don't want more of those, but I'm sure they'll come. Yep.
Yeah, dude, I always tell people like with the equipped with the bench, it's always so sketchy because either you might end up doing the Mendy, which is toward your legs, or the reverse Mendy, which is toward your face. So
Yep.
like, it could go one of two ways and extremely quick, dude. Like, I mean, I've had something come back at my face, scrape my forehead. Luckily we had the savers like right where they were supposed to be, but like it touched my forehead and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, and it
It's,
took all but half a second, right? So, but that's
yeah.
that's what makes it fun. Like that
Yeah, I
it's
like the
it's the
challenge
X
of it. I like the
Games.
challenge of it. Yep, it really is. Yeah, it's frustrating and rewarding
Yeah.
all at the same time. So, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because it feels like even with something like as clean and polished as like the USAPL or the IPF, it's like the raw stuff is great, but the single ply stuff still feels like the X Games versus like the Olympics. Like it feels like an extreme sport. The other thing about equipped is you have everything that's like really polished, like with the raw stuff, the USAPL, the IPF, and the single ply still feels like the X Games. Like it feels like an extreme sport, which I think is
yeah,
just like so appealing, especially like, I grew up skateboarding like heavy metal. So it's like into
yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of like that facet of things. So it feels extreme, in a way.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I skateboarded. I was like a punk hardcore kid, skateboarding, getting it, throughout the whole neighborhood, throughout the town, getting kicked out of plazas. Just, like giving us a hard time all the time. It's just how it was, man. But it was good. It was a good time to grow up like that. I think obviously that's kind of like one of the things that attracted me towards that is like I grew up like in the hardcore punk community, and then also like being drawn to those kind of things as a kid already definitely helped that. And I played sports growing up. I played baseball, a little bit of football. Didn't really like football that much, but did a lot of baseball. And wanting to still like do some sort of athletics and strength training helped with that. You know what I mean? Kind of like guided me
Yeah.
towards that stuff eventually. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely like the X Games for sure. Just on a different type of level.
Yeah, yeah, dude. It's like the dire consequences if something goes wrong. Another thing I'm curious about is have you ever bombed out? And if you haven't, have you had a client or someone that you know who has bombed out? And how have you mentally recovered from that? Or how have you helped people recover from that? Because that's a kick in the dick.
Yeah. I bombed out in my first sanction meet because I forgot there was commands on bench. So I missed each bench command on each bench. And they moved fine, but like on the opener, I think I jumped the start command. On the second one, I jumped the press command. On the third one, I jumped the rack command. So technically I bombed out on that first sanction meet, which was a learning experience. But the coach I was using at the time, like we didn't practice any of this. So obviously part of it's my fault as a client forgetting about that existing. But I also felt like I was very underprepared by that coach for the meet as far as that goes. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
think that helped reinforce into me. I have never had a client bomb out since I've been coaching in 5 years now, somewhere around there. Because I like to make people very prepared for what is coming, and we also keep openers to where 90% on squat and bench, and then 88% on deadlift is typically what my formula is for most people. That way, because you go through the whole meet, you've done 6 attempts already. You can come in for your deadlift upper and just smoke the dog shit out of it and stay in the meet. You know what I mean? I don't want somebody coming in at 93% and like missing, going to retake your opener 3 times and hopefully scrape by. I'd rather you just come in and like destroy your deadlift opener, build that confidence up. Cause deadlift is so confidence oriented. So like if you smoke your opener, typically the rest of your attempts are going to go well because this is going well. So that's part of my plan with that too. But I kind of like over prepare people, I feel like, especially like when I coach people who've never competed before. Like we typically like go through a checklist of, make sure we know what the commands are for this type of fed you're in and the meet you're in. What's the equipment? What's the environment going to be like? Do you have all the stuff you need for meet day as far as like uniform attire, snacks, hydration, caffeine, when to take caffeine throughout the meet. How's the meet going to be set up as far as flights go? Is it sessions? So I'm a bit of an over preparer in everything because I do that for myself, but I also do that as a coach too. Now, once you get used to a client, you've coached them for 3, 4 meets now, they typically don't need all of that stuff and they know what the game plan is. But I mean, I even give them their warm up attempts for the warm up room. So here's all your attempts. They're uploaded in the app. Here's your attempt ranges, like for the meets that I can't be there for one on one with them. And you have like, we'll typically hire a handler as well, like a middleman. And then it's worked out pretty well. I've had very few instances where, I had a handler kind of take over a little bit too much and like not go by what our um plan was. Some of them had good reasons, some of them did not. But there's only so much you can control when you're not physically there.
Yeah.
So yeah, luckily I have
Yeah,
not had
and
anybody come out. So
you brought up something there with caffeine, which I think a lot of people overlook with like the stimulant intake throughout a meet because they get, so stimmed out on their second fucking squat attempt. And it's like, you still have an entire meet to get through. You're going to have a fucking adrenaline dump here. It's like, why are we sniffing ammonia on our fucking opening squat? Like, what is going on here? Like, this is too much.
yeah,
Like, I think that's a
ammonia for
very
third
big point
squat.
that a lot of people
Yeah.
miss.
Yeah. So caffeine right before you start warm-ups for squat, then ammonia only on your third attempt squat. Bench, you might need ammonia on your third attempt bench, but probably not. You know what I mean? Like it's not as like a big of a compound lift as your squat is. You know what I mean? I'm not against it, but like I don't think I think you should do a meal after squat, like a decent meal, then bench, then caffeine again right before deadlift warm-up start. Because typically that's going to be about 45 minutes. You get out for your opener. That's about 50 minutes to an hour. Now your caffeine's kicked in and you have enough to get you to ride you through the rest of the meet there. So because I need caffeine before I deadlift, I know that because I am like dead ass tired by the time, especially if I'm in a meet where I have to sit down at all. I prefer a fast meet, dude. I'd rather stand up, take a 15-minute break in between each lift and like just start warming up again. Because when I sit down, I get cold, I get inflamed, I get sore, and like your body temperature goes down, especially like in equipped. I don't want that. Like I'd rather just like, let's just do an SBD day meet. Let's just go get it over with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, the less I sit down and
Yeah.
the more I stay active, like I'd rather do a meet that's like 3 or 4 hours than a meet that's like I had a meet that I did in Gainesville a year and a half ago and it was like 12 hours long, bro. This was a single ply meet. It was outside in Florida, 12 hours long. And they changed the bench that we were using in the middle of the meet. So we warmed up on one bench. Then they're like, oh, well, this is an equipped bench flight. So we're going to switch to this bench. And it was just like, it took so long. So from my last warm up to my opening bench was like 35 minutes. I'm like, what? By the time I got to deadlift, I think I got my opener and then I missed my second and third because I was just worn out. Like it was not a good time. Not a good time at all.
No. No, that is
I don't
fucking
wanna do a
terrible.
12-hour meet. Yeah, and there was only like 40 lifters, so it should not
Yeah, dude.
it wasn't like a 75 lifter meet, it was like 43 lifters. I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't want I somewhere in
Yeah.
the middle, fine, 3 to 6 hours is fine, 11 or 12 hours is not.
Yeah. And you brought up something too. You said, which can be left to interpretation, a decent meal after squats. What does that look like? Give me an example of what a decent meal looks like after squatting.
I mean, I would keep it simple. I would keep it like peanut butter and jelly or like rice and chicken, nothing that has a lot of fat in it because that's gonna upset your stomach, make you feel bloated. Um I would just keep it very simple as far as those kind of things. Even like an Uncrustable, it's fine, but you need to have like a decent amount of calories to set you up for the rest of the day. Don't just eat candy. Candy is
Yeah.
fine during deadlifts or like right before deadlifts. If you want some simple sugar carbs to energize you for the last hour of the meet, that's the time to do it. Is like at the very end of the meet, you're warming up for deads in between deadlift attempts, just keep your energy levels higher. That's the time to employ those kind of things. Everything else throughout the day should be just basic foods that you eat regularly that are not going to make you feel sick or nauseous or bloated. So just keep it very simple.
Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah. And the timing of those things is also important. But as a coach, what what I guess would your best piece of advice be, let's say to kind of like the intermediate lifter that's been competing for a little bit, but is looking to kind of take things to the next level? What advice kind of, especially from more of like a psychological or mental aspect of things? Cause I've dealt with a lot of people, a lot of friends too, that get like anxiety before meets.
Yeah.
They can't sleep the night before the meet. And like, so give some advice to people that are dealing with those feelings of anxiousness. Maybe it's their first meet, how to kind of cope with these feelings and get through the meet.
So I still struggle with being anxious before meet day. So I will sleep like a baby the day before weigh-ins and I will have a hard time sleeping before the meet. I still internally struggle with that because I am a very over prepared, anxious person in general. So I'm always like, okay, what if happens if this happens in warm ups, or what happens if like I miss my opener? Like, what's the plan going to be for that? And I'll overthink those things to death sometimes. But I think if you're an intermediate to beginner lifter, like your goal should be to go in there and have a good time and just put up the numbers that are there on the day and have fun and meet new. That's, like, the biggest thing I can tell people is, like, and I even do that when I compete, like, I love going to meets and competing just to meet new people that I'm, like, friends with now, you know what I mean? Like, or even people I end up coaching later on, like, I love watching powerlifting. I love watching people, like, hit PRs and struggle and hit numbers that they didn't think they could hit before they walked in the building, like, I can just go to a meet and be entertained by that, you know what I mean? So, I think the biggest thing as an intermediate lifter is to go in, have fun, first of all, because you're doing this for fun still at this point as an intermediate lifter. You're not setting records. You're not going to worlds. You're there for the experience of powerlifting, and you're there to establish yourself as a powerlifter who's gaining meet day experience. You're there for the experience. But spinning that in a positive fashion to where you're having fun and you're meeting new people is always a good thing because you're going to expand your circle of people that you can interact with, even if they live out of state. Like, well, you might go do a meet in their state, and you could stay at their house, or you guys can meet up for lunch after weigh-ins. Like now you have new people to hang out with in another community that you've established. That's the biggest thing is how I would look at it as an intermediate lifter. And that's how I looked at it when I was at that level too, and still do to this extent. But when you have anxiety about meet day, I don't think it's negative, like really a bad thing. Now, if it's to the point where you can't sleep, you may need to do some therapy or meditation on that. Like I've had to send a couple clients to therapy for meet day performance anxiety, and that's helped them. You know what I mean? I'm not a therapist, but I will refer you out to someone who can help you with that. One of them was put on medication that he only uses for meet day and like his last three heavy lifts before the meet. So like his peak and taper basically. And it's been like a night and day change. It's like he takes a pill of propranolol, which is like a beta blocker for anxiety. He's like a completely different person when he competes now versus when he doesn't take one. Like he will just shit the bed, unfortunately, and get like so worked up and nauseous. He's puking, having diarrhea, sweating profusely. You're just like, oh my God, you look horrible. And now it's like he doesn't have that issue, which is great. So sometimes it does take those steps with lifters. Like if you've tried all your mental cues and all your advice that you've used that's worked for you, it's still not working, you may need to go the next step up above that. There may be an actual, you know, psychological, neurological issue that's causing those issues. Yeah. Other than that, you should be there to have fun and get meet day experience, and that's it. If you're at that level.
Yeah, yeah. And the last thing I wanted to touch on here was that you have a big squat. I mean, you have a big raw squat too. So you're in my opinion, you're definitely knocking on the door here of pushing some like 900 plus in multiply, right? So give
I've already
me
hit 9.
kind of like your best accessory exercise, or someone that's struggling with improving their squat, they've plateaued. Give me some advice for that person that wants to take their squat to the next level.
Train your adductors directly. I will say that for any level of lifting, whether you're in multiply, single ply, raw, train your adductors directly with the adductor abductor machine, with Copenhagen's, with Cossack squats, with kettlebell hip flexor raises. Train them directly and don't stop training them. No matter how you squat, you're going to use that muscle. It's a very strong muscle. In any squat. But if you're squatting wide in gear, you're using a shit ton of adductor. Even though there's protection there, that muscle's still being utilized, even though it's got pressure on it. And the wider you squat, obviously, the more of that's going to be utilized as well. But even for people who are lifting raw, narrow stance, you're going to end up injuring that area if you don't train it directly and keep it strong. And I've torn both of those at the same time as a raw squatter.
Yeah.
I had to go through like physical rehab for like 6 months, and I had to relearn how to deadlift and squat because the injury was so bad. Like my groin was torn, both my adductors were torn at the same time. Like I did like the lightest tempo squats and stiff legged deadlifts for 6 months, and that's all I could do, which ended up paying off eventually, because once I could squat again and once I could deadlift again, like my form was better. because I did like back then I would kind of squat my conventional deadlift, and that fixed that issue of where my hips were in a much higher position. My posterior chain was stronger. So just because you get injured doesn't mean you can't come out of like doing something better. You know what I mean? You should be working on, getting stronger in other areas and working around those injuries. And a lot of times it actually forces you to work on those weaknesses to where the things that you were holding you back. But as far as squatting goes, like pause squats are great, dude. Whether you're squatting in wraps or sleeves or even single ply, to be honest with you. Like I don't want to pause a squat in single ply gear, but like doing them raw as an accessory for single ply. Anything you can do to remove that stretch reflex and just get really strong. Now you actually have to pause it. None of this bullshit you see on social media. Like, oh, here's a pause deadlift. I'm like, where was the pause? Here's a pause squat. I'm like, where's the 2-second pause? Get rid of the stretch reflex. Don't go back down after the pause. Like you should be motionless and then reverse the weight back up to get advantage of like taking away that stretch reflex. That's the whole point
Yeah.
of it. So if you're going to do a pause variation, do it the right way. You know what I mean? You're going to get way more out of it as far as carryover strength goes. Um,
Yeah.
I, I think, obviously accommodated resistance is great. Raw lifters can benefit from it just as much as equipped lifters, depending on how you set it up and employ it. Do they need it all the time? No. But if you have someone who kind of slows down midway up or near the top, then it can be a good thing to teach people how to drive and can keep force production throughout the lift. Like people should keep those things in their back pocket and not be afraid to try them. Just because they see equipped lifters doing it doesn't mean it doesn't help raw lifters. I'll be honest with you, I've gotten like way stronger as a raw lifter lifting for single ply. Like my total has gone from in sleeves like 1700 to 1850 raw, like at least 1850 right now, just training single ply, not even training raw directly. Obviously there's some carryover there that's occurring between the equipment and also the secondary movements that we're using to make the main movement stronger. I think people are just so like one track mind of like, oh, I have to lift like in this Chico system to get stronger. I'm like, dude, if you have somebody who knows how to program you like conjugate correctly, even as a raw lifter, you're still going to get stronger. The biggest thing is be buying into the program and buying into your coach and the vision, and you're going to get stronger. Like it's all going to work. It all works to varying degrees, So
Yeah,
yeah,
I completely agree. Yeah, and fucking dad tearing both adductors at the same time. Jesus,
yeah,
because I tore my right adductor. It's fucking terrible, dude. It's
I
terrible.
couldn't, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't lay on my back. I couldn't lay on my stomach. Like I was in agonizing pain for months, dude.
Dude.
I had to keep going.
I can't imagine, dude.
I didn't miss any work. I just kept going to work and like down in Tylenol to get through the day, and then doing my 3 or 4 training sessions a week to try to get back to where I was, and ended up getting
Yep.
stronger after it.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Yeah, same here. My fucking like the entire part of my fucking leg was all purple and shit, but like, still showing up to work, still fucking jamming it out. You know what I mean?
oh
So
yeah,
fucking dude, thank you so much for coming on. Plug your social media where people can find you for your lifts, your coaching, and all the
yeah.
content.
My personal page is Earth X Mover, and that's I do a lot of coaching stuff on there, and I have like our coaching page is Strength Expression Training Systems. We have a group of 3 coaches that we all work together. One of my clients, Justin, is also a coach, and Taylor Brown is he coaches like the high school football team and weightlifting, powerlifting team over at his school in Pensacola. He's part of our coaching group as well. Yeah, I'm also a meet director for 365 Strong Florida. We have This is Powerlifting 2 coming up in 2 weeks on July 26th. And like he said earlier, that's a fully mixed powerlifting meet where it's equipped versus raw versus untested, male versus female. So everybody's on the same level playing field, fighting under the same standards to lift against the record in their weight class and equipment class that they enter. Those are the things we got coming up right now.
Fucking sick, dude. Right on. Well, thanks again for joining me, man. I highly appreciate it.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it. All right,
Absolutely.
bye.